Hello, thanks for clicking on the video. I'm sure everyone is curious as to what some random guy thought of Superman. I really liked it. It was very good. It was very silly in the best way. It was very comic booky, which is probably too much for some people. Like, I wouldn't recommend this film to my dad, but I definitely recommend it to anyone that likes Marvel films, for example, or likes comic books, or even just like in the Injustice games, just seeing lots of DC characters on screen at once was pretty cool. Was it too silly? You could argue that. Um, there was some tension in the film of like pretty cool like character interactions and dialogue, and it was rarely like undercut with comedy, with like the Marvel humor. But I wouldn't say too much. It didn't really retract from the film. In terms of action, I would say that it was really cool. Like Superman was doing some, I mean, you've seen it in the trailers probably, the way he's like flying around, shooting the lasers out of his eyes. That was really cool. And I'm saying cool a lot, I've realised. I mean, it's a pretty good way to describe a film. He's often going against people that are similar strength, which is kind of weird seeing a Superman that's not leagues above everyone else. But it does make the fight scenes a bit more interesting. I would say there's not a lot of tension with the fight scenes or action scenes because you know no one's going to get hurt. Like when a building's about, this isn't a spoiler, but when a building's about to fall on a woman and you see like a car driving away and it's like, oh, is Superman going to get there in time? Yes. He got there in time. They weren't just going to show some random lady just die. In fact, Superman goes really far out of his way to save everyone. In terms of like cinematography, I don't think many shots stand out. I've only seen the film once, so I didn't get to take a lot of it in. But there were some standout shots. One especially, I won't because I don't want to spoil anything. But there's one in particular um, involving dust, and I think it was the best one in the film. It was really, really good. There were some other ones where there's one where it's like goes into slow mo, and you're really like meant to take it in. But other than that, it was just more interesting to look at than recent Marvel films because everything was really colourful and bright and vibrant. There wasn't this sort of grey filter to try and make it look realistic, but only in post. It was filmed as a silly film, and then it was like color graded and edited as a silly film in a good way. I mean, some people might not like that. In terms of the story, it was a bit all over the place. It was a very fast paced film, for better or worse. This is the first proper film in this new DC universe, so many things are just like, here's a Green Lantern, here's a girl with hawk wings and she screams, and here's this guy and he can transform into like any element. Um, there was a lot going on. It kind of brushed over a lot of things very quickly. Um, I'm trying to avoid spoilers here, but there's a reveal to do with like the Justice Gang, which is glossed over incredibly quickly, and I knew it going into the film. Um, I was expecting it to be more prevalent in the actual story. I'll talk about it later. But yeah, very, very fast-paced film. It's good if you don't really like 5 hour long films and you just want to have a nice, couple of hours. But I think it could have probably done with some longer scenes just so characters could like reflect and talk about big, big things that happened in the film that were just brushed over incredibly quickly. I'd say a negative with the story would be sort of there's not many surprises. If you've seen the trailers, you can pretty much guess everything bar a couple of things. There was some surprising character stuff, especially with Lex Luthor. I was surprised with quite how evil he was at times, but in terms of overall plot, not not really anything that you won't expect. Speaking of characters, yes, a concern people had going into the film, and I had as well, sort of, was that there were too many characters. There are too many characters. There are a lot of characters that are just there. They say a couple of lines. There's no development. They don't do a lot. They're just there, which is cool for people that recognize those characters. And it's like, oh, this is a character I recognize from a comic book or a game, but it's probably just weird and a lot to take in for people that, for example, don't know who Girl is or don't know sort of just comics and wider DC stuff. I think comic fans can fill in a lot of character gaps, but so I can't speak to how a non-comic book enjoyer, how much they'd enjoy a film. The Justice Gang, especially, will brush over incredibly quickly, more quickly than I was expecting. There wasn't really any, no backstory, no development, not too many even like scenes with them talking. Bar one character, Mr. Terrific. Surprisingly liked him. I had literally never heard of him prior to the film and the trailers. Superman, pretty big character in the film. He was really good. I think he was deliberately corny, which some people might find surprising if they've only seen Man of Steel, because it's really different. I'll talk about it later, but it's a really different film from Man of Steel. It's deliberately corny in like a kind of how you describe a dog to be like sweet but silly. He was kind of innocent despite his strength, which, you know, is kind of fun. So you have this guy who's like ultra powerful, and he's constantly surprised with how evil and how mistrusting people are, because you can't, I mean, they did actually, I say that in this film, he doesn't have too many physical challenges. Like, you're not really scared of him physically, but in terms of how he like reacts to other characters and situations, that's more interesting than his fight scenes. So this Superman is, I would say, much more similar to the Christopher Reeve Superman in that he genuinely wants to do good. There's not like this inner sort of turmoil like there was in Man of Steel, where he's like wrestling with whether he should do good and help. He just does do good and help, and is frustrated when he can't. Lois Lane, I thought was great. She there's kind of a bit of a stereotype in films where it's like the male lead is a bit silly and quite strong, and just wants to have fun and be silly. And then the female like co-star is it the wet blanket and like the sensible one. But she was a really good character, just regardless of Superman. She was very competent, like actually good at journalism. Not like she didn't just do everything because she can. Like it's in the trailer, but she goes to fly Mr. Terrific ship, and I'm just like, I don't think they teach you at like a journalism school or whatever. But no, she really struggles at first, and it's a funny thing. And I thought they were really good together. There's this they do an interview together, and it's very back and forth, and you can see how it kind of starts as a playful thing, and then actually becomes more and more journalistic. I don't know if that's a word. He gets more and more defensive, and it just escalates, and it's quite interesting to watch. Lex Luthor was surprisingly evil. He I won't spoil anything here, but he does some pretty evil stuff. Like, you can see he doesn't care about people. He is only focused on like defeating Superman and whatnot. So I was worried because of how lighthearted the film seemed and is at times. But no, he genuinely is a villain that you're not meant to like. But he's interesting to watch. The only gripe I have with the character is so minor. In like the animated shows and from what I've seen in comics and games and whatnot, he is meant to be, usually at least, like a peak man. Very strong, like physically, he works out a lot, very rich, very smart, all that. And yet he still feels inferior to Superman. But here, he's not, I mean, no offense to the actor, he's not quite as, big. He's just like, there's not, I feel they lose that aspect of him a tiny bit where he's not, jacked. And he comes across a bit whiny at times, especially towards the end of the film. He's not as well composed as I think I'm used to seeing the character in other mediums. But it's not really a big deal. It's only for a small portion of a film, and it's just a different take on the character, which I still enjoyed. Much better than the Man of Steel version, I thought, which was kind of like weird and quirky, but I don't know. There are too many weird and quirky characters in these sorts of films, so I'm glad they didn't go that route again. And another major character, I think, if I'm talking about only the major ones, because I'm not going to be talking about all the characters, because I said earlier, there are too many, and most of them don't really do or say a lot. But Crypto, pretty big character in the story. People in the cinema were like going, and all, like they thought he was cute. He was pretty cool as well. Yeah, he'd like help Superman in fights. I mean, I heard online before watching the film that James Gunn cut a scene of him getting hit, presumably in a fight scene, and I'm pretty sure I worked out where they cut it from, because he like flies in, hits someone, and the next thing you know, the dog's on the ground, and like, did he just like crash land? But I thought, that was where he got hit. But it's not a big deal. But he definitely helped humanize Superman even more, and made him even more relatable than he already was. And I think it makes this version of Superman a bit unique, because as far as I'm aware, there's not already been a live action Superman with his dog. Big complaint about the character. There's not really a big complaint, but complaint about the characters, or lack thereof, is, well, there are a lot of sort of side characters. There wasn't really like a central villain. There was Lex Luthor, but there wasn't a central sort of physical threat villain. They were just kind of, I mean, you see it in the trailers, there's lots of sort of various generic monsters and whatnot that it needs to fight. None of them were particularly interesting or compelling, more so than just like, wow, that's cool, or haha, that's funny. They were just sort of there for Superman to do his thing. Before I get on to spoilers, was it better than Man of Steel? I see some people getting really angry online, and defensive. They're very different films, but I think if someone asked me which do I prefer, I'm gonna give an annoying answer and say sort of neither, like a bit of a non-answer. I liked Man of Steel more as a film, and it made me think more about the film afterwards. But James Gunn's Superman is more interesting in how it could potentially lead on to other films, because obviously this is the start of a new thing, whereas Man of Steel, especially at the time, was its standalone thing. So feel free to disagree with me in the comments or whatever, but Man of Steel I felt was a really interesting sort of film, with a lot of metaphors and symbolism about like kind of a god coming down, leagues above everyone else. A lot of long scenes of him like wrestling with all these ideas of should he help, what will the world think of him. Superman, none of that. It's just action. It's just silly comic plots, and it gets you thinking, how could this lead on to other films, especially at the end. Talk about it later. If I had to watch one film again, it would be Man of Steel. I like the darker, more serious stuff, but as this is Superman, with it hopefully continuing on to like a Batman film, a Supergirl film, a Flash film, or a Swamp Thing film, all these other properties that are going to have different tones and eventually link together. I'm sort of glad that Superman is this upbeat, jolly film, because if Superman is down in the dumps and depressing, you can't differentiate Batman that much, because I'm not explaining this well, but Superman is meant to be the happiest, sort of jolliest hero, and if he's not, everything else is just going to be even more depressing, and it would start to drag at a certain point. I hope for like Batman they take it more seriously, and there is this contrast in tone, and then that should hopefully be quite fun when they meet up. Hopefully I explained that decently. Probably not, but yeah, I like them both. Honestly, in my ideal world, I could watch superhero films forever as long as they're good. I'd actually really like a Snyder Cut Part 2, see him actually fight Darkseid, and I'd also really like to see Superman 2 and Supergirl and Batman, and all by James Gunn. So yeah, there you go. And really quickly, you can talk about some spoilers. Probably timestamped it in the video for people to avoid it. I mean, there's not really much to spoil, if I'm honest. I think the 3 spoilers I've got listed down are Ultraman is revealed to be a clone of Superman. Not really a big twist. I assumed most people worked it out, especially people that like know of Superman outside of the films. It's like I took it for granted. Like it wasn't really a big reveal. And when they did reveal it, they didn't really do a lot with it. They just freaking killed him. It's like, oh, you're a clone of me and you're dead. If I had to guess, he'll probably just become Bizarro or something like that. Maybe later, maybe they'll forget about him. Probably an even a bigger twist on that though was his origins of his parents being arseholes. Like they didn't just send him to do good, they sent him to restart sort of his race after his planet blew up, which is, I think, different from at least most adaptations. I'm not familiar with any where his parents are dicks. And the whole message of the film, it's like the crux of the film's message is, you know, I mean, his dad spells it out for him, his Earth dad. Like, you are good because you choose to do good, not because you were told to do good. You know, a nice message. I was just surprised the whole film. I thought they'd go back and go, oh, well, you know, Lex Luthor messed a bit. No, it is just that is what it is. Pretty Nick twist, I was surprised. But as I said earlier, the film moves at such a fast pace, you don't really get a lot of time for him to sort of think about it and talk about it. I mean, there is a scene with Lois where he kind of, it's a bit emotional, but then there's also like a joke in the background going on, which does undercut it a tiny bit. It was surprising in a good way. Maybe some people won't like it because it's quite different from what's come before. But, you know, finally, there's not really like any big post-credit scenes. There's not like a Thanos reveal at the end or a tease for the next film. There's just Supergirl pops in. And I wasn't expecting her to show up. I knew they were making a Supergirl film. I was surprised that she's like a party girl. Apparently they've done that in the comics before. I think it's Woman of Tomorrow. Oh yeah, by the way, the screening we went to got like a little Superman cut and got like a little comic strip that like a series of comics that the films was based on, and like the guy sat next to me was dressed as Superman. So it was a pretty cool atmosphere. So maybe that clouding my sort of thoughts about it because of the experience was fun. But I still think the film was pretty good in of itself. But anyway, yeah, Supergirl, pretty surprised to see her. She comes up, picks up the dog. After liking Superman, I'm excited to see Supergirl and any other sort of DC films with James Gunn directs or producers. So I think I've addressed most major points. Thank you so much to anyone who actually watched all of this. I hope it was somewhat interesting. Feel free to disagree or whatever. I like discussion. You can tell me I'm wrong. I will enjoy listening to why you think that. But yeah, thank you. Overall, it's a good film. If you like comic book films, if you don't like comic book films, it's a very comic booky film. Probably don't bother, but I had fun at least. So thank you.